Welcome back, everybody. It's the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast brought to you by Reality Sports Online. I'm your host, Scott Bogman. Follow me on the Twitter at Bogman Sports. I'm joined, as always, by Pat Fitzmaurice at Fitz_FF on the Twitter machine. And today on the show, we're bringing in Jeremy Browand at Dynasty Madman. He is the host of the Dynasty Trades HQ podcast, and we're going to be talking Dynasty startups with him. But before we get into that, I got to tell you guys about a contest we are doing. We're doing a giveaway for a Cam Akers autographed helmet right now. All you need to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/fantasypros. Take a screenshot, submit it to fantasypros.com/dynastycontest. That's fantasypros.com/dynastycontest. And you are entered in. Do it as soon as possible. This ends at the end of May. And don't forget that YouTube is the best way to experience this episode and all of our other episodes. All you got to do, go to youtube.com/fantasypros. This podcast, along with everything else, pods, quick hitting videos, live streams, is on our YouTube. Please subscribe if you like our content, because it really helps us out, and click the bell to get notified for our latest content so you don't miss any of our podcasts at all. Fitz, how was your weekend? And how is everything in your world, my friend?
It was a good weekend, Bog. Survived a bachelor party weekend for my cousin that included 36 rounds of golf. I'd not played 36 holes in a single day for quite a while. So lived to tell the tale and, survived the weekend. But I need a weekend to recover from my weekend.
I bet. The older we get, the longer in the tooth, the more recovery time we need. The recovery time's worse than the partying. In terms of time. Jeremy, welcome to the show, man. Happy to have you here. How have you been? Did you get past the draft and you survived? You're still ticking?
Yes. I went to it last year because it was in Cleveland, and that was actually really fantastic. But I went to it with a friend of mine who goes to everything, tries to get front row at concerts and all of that. So I waited as long as we spent at the draft, I feel like, just to get to the front and then get down later to, the red carpet area for the end of the second day. It was really cool. So I didn't go to Vegas with the crazies that did that, but it was fun to watch it at home. And I'm kind of glad I did. Actually watched part of the first round with some friends, half of it, and the kids were with me and they can't hang for very long. So finished it at home, and I'm glad I did, because so many players were slipping. It just became, I don't know, we were cringing along with the players that were slipping. And I think we kind of expected quarterbacks to do that, but it's nice to just sit and take it in at home and relax. And of course, the next two nights after the first night, it takes forever. You can't really do it anywhere.
Yeah.
Just do it.
It's the draft is always, I think it's my favorite sporting event of the year, which is crazy to say because it's not even, there's no score, it's just reading off names pretty much, but the excitement and the impact of all the players and everything, and the crazy trades we had this year. I don't know if anything's going to be a Vegas draft with all kinds of trades. Pat didn't even know that AJ Brown was traded until after the first round because he was in Vegas and his phone
it's tough
died.
to get reception, right? Yeah, with that too. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, in the theater, they do not announce the picks. Well, they announce the picks. They don't announce the trades. So all of a sudden someone else is on the clock and you don't know what happened, what sort of maneuvering went on. It's like an information dearth, even though you are at ground zero of, the draft. It is crazy.
You would think they would flash up something on the screen, at least this pick traded for blah, blah, and blah.
It would be
or
so
would
easy,
have,
man.
The NFL Network broadcast in front of you somewhere up there. Just doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think they did that in Cleveland too, now that you mention it. All of a sudden, the Browns are on the clock or whatever, or somebody else is, and they kept, trading it. And it was a surprise. And of course, you're trying to get on Twitter to see what's going on because everybody has it first there. But I now that you say that, I believe they did that last year too.
And there's got to be no reception because there's 250,000 people at this thing, like all the time. It's like, it's like a giant parade. It's almost like a winning the Super Bowl parade, except for, all 32 teams show up.
Oh yeah. Every team. Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about dynasty startups and approaching the draft. So Jeremy, you are obviously great to be on here with us as host of the Dynasty Trades HQ podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the podcast and any other work you're doing?
Yeah, the Dynasty Trades HQ podcast, my friends Shea Manila, Michael Sipes, we've been doing that for at least 4 years now. They make a joke like it's been forever, but it's cool that we forget because we still really do enjoy it. Most of the time, sometimes, we get in little arguments or whatever, but it's kind of like you get in a fight with your family member. It's
right.
like if somebody else comes after those guys, you better believe, you're gonna have to pay for that. But like we just can't help it, because we're so close. But we have a great time, a lot of trade talk, but we do other things too. We have our own shows where we talk about strategies like this, at times start up for Dynasty, best what to do in the off season, all kinds of top topics like that. Pat's been on a couple times. We've done plenty of mock drafts, but we try to get into it a little differently than, everybody does mock drafts. So we try to do something a little bit different with that. But honestly, if you want to listen to a fun podcast and you got an hour to spend, definitely tune in. We have a lot of laughs, and the guys that do the show with me are awesome, both Mike and Shane.
First rule of fantasy, it's got to be fun. That's the first rule in fantasy for my book, right? It's got to be fun.
Dynasty Trades HQ is nothing if not a fun podcast. These guys, and it is great if you are a hardcore Dynasty player, like you want to listen to that show, because these guys have been doing it for a while. Their expertise shows, and they're funny about it. I mean, it's like a very fun podcast.
Let's get into it here. Let's talk about approaching a Dynasty startup here. You're in the offseason now. You're gathering up the people to start your league. We're not going to go too much into rules. This is more about draft strategy and that kind of stuff. Sure. But of course, if anybody has rules, we're Pat and I are available on stages on our Discord. I'm there every single Monday night at 8 Eastern. So you guys can check us out there. But let's get into it here, Pat. And what is your emphasis to start? Do you like to go with a 3-year window, which is a lot of things you hear? You hear a lot of people say, hey, you know what? Screw the youth. I'm going to win today. I want to acquire vets. I want to get in and get out. I mean, a lot of Dynasty leagues, a lot of leagues in general, they stay open for a little bit. Too many people quit and they fold up. So that to me is kind of always the first thing that I think of, Pat. So when you're looking at it, are you going in with a certain mindset, or is it a BPA? Is it a 3-year window? Is it a win now? What are you looking at?
I am generally trying to win a Dynasty league in year 2. That's kind of how I'm leaning towards youth, but I don't want to be in a rebuild from the start where I'm drafting all rookies and waiting, 2 or 3 or 4 years for my championship window to open. I kind of want to go, with a tilt towards youth. And, hopefully be competitive in year 1, but mainly be ready in year 2. Guys whose value is going to appreciate quite a bit from the first year to the next.
What do you think, Jeremy? Are you in that window as well? The kind of win in year 2 and all of that?
Year 1, 2, not just to go in and try to win and leave, because we've all been in leagues where that has happened in the past. Typically now that's not as much of a problem, and hopefully not everyone's trying to do the same thing. But I think you can have the best of both worlds by doing it, just like Pat said. You don't have to set yourself up for just, I want to win now, it's year 1 or bust, but certainly aiming for year 2, no reason why you might not be able to win it in year 1. I like to tier or stagger the ages of my players, not go for all young players and, I've got all my favorite players, because then you might not be winning until year 12. It just depends. You're going to be taking the long way. I think you need to go after the best players. I think that's what this is about. And, not necessarily even having to do player evaluations, but it wouldn't be fun for me if I didn't try to build a great team with the best players. And you know what? People got out on Tom Brady a little too soon, didn't they? I mean, we were talking about
got out him 10 years ago.
3, yeah, exactly. His 3 years just keep on coming. I think players tend to move, or owners tend to move away from players a little too quickly. I think it works well for running backs, because after age 26 rather, 27, 28, I mean, you're talking about there's definitely a decline. But with certain positions, tight end, quarterback, those guys can play for a long time. You don't have to worry as much. So you can just get the best guys. And then, especially at tight end, I think you need to do that. Get one of those top 3 players if you can. And then you can always, you're always going to be struggling to find the replacements anyway, but at least you have one of them, and you're not just finding replacements for, the best tight ends. So I like to win, but not just, like a redraft player. I like to go for the younger players that are peaking now or about to, if you think that there's more yet to come for some of these younger players, like say Jonathan Taylor, you want to get in get a good young running back. Well, he's at the top and he's also young. So it's not like you're going after Derrick Henry and trying to get his last year. So I think you can really have all of that. But it all depends on how other people start. You can have your philosophies, late round quarterback, that works well. I think that you have to be fluid with it because you don't know what everyone else is doing necessarily in the draft, what their strategies are. You can't have everybody, waiting on running backs, zero running back or late round quarterback. It's nice to think of all those different ways you can approach a draft, kind of keep them in your back pocket, but basically be fluid and have a plan and hopefully come away with an elite quarterback in the first round, unless you're drafting later in the first round and you might not be able to do that. Then you can get one of the elite players at another position and get the quarterback in round 2, maybe a tier below that, get a couple of those guys. So I think you can always come out of a startup from any position with a good team, but you definitely have to pivot off of what everyone else is doing.
You got to mock a lot too, because like you said, everybody's got a plan, but it's the old Mike Tyson. Everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the face, right? So if you don't plan for something, or if you don't have, the strategy in the back of your mind of, I got to take X, Y, or Z, then sometimes you're going to get thrown off. Pat, let me ask you about that. Are you approaching every draft? I mean, obviously there's changes in formats and stuff, but if we're talking about a 1 quarterback league that's PPR and it's 2 RBs, 3 wide receivers, tight end, flex, kicker, D, are you approaching it the same time, the same style every draft, or does it depend on where your draft spot is? If it's auction, is there something different, or is it just, look, these are the players I like, I want to make sure I try to get them kind of regardless?
I mean, I'm generally taking the same sort of age approach where I'm trying to focus on youth and do that year 2 thing. But I think the approach changes somewhat depending on the value of things positionally. And, I kind of want to turn that back on you guys and ask, do you tend to be wide receiver heavy or running back heavy in your builds? Because I think sometimes it's a little easier to build like a stable base if you go for wide receivers, because we know they tend to age a little bit better, have more longevity. And I think Matt Kelly and his troops over at playerprofiler.com have found that the age apex for running back is 24.7. I mean, these guys age out of the league so quickly. You've got guys turning 26 and all of a sudden we're worried about the end of their careers being dead ahead. So, but at the same time, you need running backs. You got to slot those guys in. And if you decide you're going to just totally eschew those guys in the early rounds, then suddenly you're going to be dumpster diving at running back and you're not going to be that great. And you're going to be playing catch up there. So, how do you guys handle that? Does that kind of depend for you on how the startup draft falls, or are you generally trying to be stronger at one position or emphasize one position more so than the others?
For me, I know I'm taking RBs first still. And it's because like you said, Pat, sure, they don't last as long, but you have to have them. You have 2 spots on there, and plus a flex, plus you need some depth. So I want to get out ahead. If I'm picking first, my pick every single time is going to be Jonathan Taylor. So that is just going to be how it is, because he's our number 1 running back. He's young. He's in a run first team because they have an older quarterback in Matt Ryan and a solid defense. So for me, it's always going to be JT if I have the 1-1. But I understand wanting to take wide receivers because they last longer and the investment is better. I just think we're kind of, wide receivers are fairly cheap right now. Even upper echelon wide receivers are fairly cheap compared to running backs, at least. So for me, I'm still hammering running backs, where I've kind of waffled on this a little bit, but it seems like I'm always running out of RB. So I want those really good ones at the front. Jeremy, you're the same way? It's RB still over wide receivers, or does it change depending on what's going on?
I try not to alter the overall theme of that much, because I used to do it differently. I used to spend most of my assets, use my equity to get wide receivers, and I would just have a ton of them, and and then backups to them, and I'd have like a couple of great running backs, and then just backups from other teams, and just especially in leagues where you only have to start 1. So, but come to find, it's much more difficult to replace a great running back than it is to replace like a middling wide receiver. I mean, all year long off waivers, you find wide receivers that are valuable, that you can, every team's rolling out 3 wide and 4 wide sets. There are just so many wide receivers. So my thing now is to definitely try to get an elite running back as early as I can, a couple of those guys, so that I don't have to worry. But my tendency really is toward an elite tight end, because then I can plug Kelsey or Kittle or, whoever the next man up is. I can plug them in and I don't have to worry about that, 16 weeks out of the year. It's just because I'm not qualified to tell you what tight ends are going to do from week to week. I try sometimes figure it out, analyzing who to start, but I tend to fail as much as I succeed with doing that. I feel like it's just kind of a riddle that I can't solve. So I love to have that elite tight end, and they're so valuable if you need to trade one. People are willing to pay for them, especially as we get into more and more popular tight end premium leagues. But yeah, running back. And I play in a lot of leagues with different scoring. So to make things interesting, 2 quarterback super flex, right? Or 2 quarterback where you're using more of those players from the pool. And then sometimes like a point per carry league is what I'm trying to get out of my mouth here, a point per carry league, because then you want the bell cow running backs. And yet, as we know, it's kind of they're falling by the wayside. There just aren't as many of them. And so you need to go early on a top shelf running back if you're planning to get one that you can count on. And I think that's a good approach. If I can come away with an elite tight end and one of the best quarterbacks in a super flex league out of those top 2 rounds, I'm fairly comfortable from that point forward. Because if you can get, even if it's Justin Herbert, if you get a young guy like that you're going to have forever, and you get, George Kittle, let's say, or Kelsey a few years ago, and you just plug those 2 guys in for years to come, I feel like you're building a house. The better the foundation. Why take risks in the first couple of rounds? And we know people that do that. They want their favorite player, or a player that maybe hasn't hit that apex yet, and they're reaching a little bit. I don't feel like you should ever do that in the first couple rounds, unless maybe you're in a league with buddies that, you just started, you're going to be in it forever, and you want all your favorite players. I'm sure that could be fun, but you're not going to win.
I like Jeremy, just with the nicest way of saying, unless you're playing in the shallow end, we're not taking risks. So
yeah, I guess
you put that very nicely. I thought much nicer than I would have. So I mean, I call them Reuben Boob leagues. When you're with your buddies, they're not listening to a podcast like this. They're grabbing the magazine. They come in somewhat uninformed. It is, I guess, what I would say.
I love it.
Yeah. That's just the way some of those leagues go. But I got to tell you guys about Wealthfront. And as the saying goes, don't gamble what you can't afford to lose. With all the high risk investment options out there today, one of the safest bets you can make with your money is a long-term automated investment account like Wealthfront. The secret to Wealthfront's performance is great software. It's built to make it easy, rewarding, and yes, even delightful to build your long-term wealth. Wealthfront's automated trading optimizes your portfolio based on your own risk settings, helping you reach your financial goal without lifting a finger. They also will you will also get an automatic tax break that can boost your returns even when the market dips, kind of like a bonus coupon you can redeem at tax time. You can go with Wealthfront's expert-built portfolios, including a socially responsible option that's designed around sustainability, diversity, and equity, or you can build your own portfolio with their curated selection of funds. Wealthfront is trusted with over $27 billion in assets, helping nearly 500,000 people build their wealth. And Investopedia just named them their best robo advisor for 2022. Pretty amazing considering that it is May right now, and they've already won an award for 2022. Go to wealthfront.com/dynasty to get started today. Pat, on that subject of, going after tight ends and tight end premiums, I think we just saw an example of why you want to invest in tight ends earlier with this draft class, right? Because we all want to have a good tight end, and you think, man, there are some great options for fantasy coming out. And there are some good ones still that came out, but Trey McBride ended up in a bad spot in Arizona, sitting behind Zach Ertz. That was our number 1 tight end. Greg Dulcich went to Denver behind Albert Okwuegbunam, and Russell Wilson hasn't really been known to throw the ball to a tight end a ton. And a couple of these other guys. He's too short
to see him. I'm sorry.
I'm not going to make fun of short guys as a 5'9" guy here. So we're not going to have
I mean,
that.
There's got to be a reason he doesn't throw to the tight end. I'm just saying.
Yeah, over the middle. Probably, I don't know what it is. Maybe he's just never had really great ones. They've all been okay. Well, the Ravens go out and get Charlie Kolar, great, but you've already have Mark Andrews there, and they took Isaiah Likely. So there's not a lot of good options to fix that this draft. I think every year you get running backs, wide receivers, usually quarterbacks. We only really had one this year, which has been an issue. But for tight ends, we really didn't get much. So I think it has an emphasis even more on tight ends. And there's a lot of leagues moving towards tight end premium, Pat. So are you a invest in tight end early guy, or is it becoming more out of necessity and not necessarily a strategy you would like to employ?
My strategy on this has shifted largely because of what Jeremy was talking about earlier with the, pay up and get something proven. Like, I have had a lot of failures trying to hit the middle class of tight end. Like, if I'm either going to pay up or I'm going to dumpster dive. There's like no in between. And I have had some miserable experiences trying to hit youthful tight ends in the past. I mean, there was one startup a few years ago where I got both and spent pretty significant startup capital on David Njoku and OJ Howard. And I mean, that set my franchise back years. Like, I was in a rebuild right from the start after whiffing on those two.
I mean, I've had a couple of OJ Howards. I was so in. I pushed all the chips in on OJ Howard, and it did not pan out.
And I was Njoku. And I mean, that entire class of the best. What was the third tight end that year? Wasn't there a third?
Yeah, there was someone else who was pretty good in that
kind
class.
Of like, they didn't do what you expected. And that's,
I mean, Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson were super high, and they're middling. I'm not going to be like Pat and say the middle class is drying up, not only in real life, but also in the tight end world here. But, right. They are the middle era. So you have like your top 4 or 5 guys. And then after that, it's take a shot, throw a dart, something, take a young guy, take a Dallas Goedert or whoever, so it's kind of been drying up in that respect. Let's talk a little bit about Superflex here, versus one QB. So Jeremy, if you're doing a startup right now, do you want it to be Superflex? Because it seems like as an industry, we're moving more towards Superflex being a standard. I don't know if it ever will be. Mm-hmm. People are hard to adjust, especially people in those leagues that we were talking about before that show up on draft day with a magazine. They don't really want anything different. They want what they've usually seen before. So what do you think? If you're starting up right now, do you want it to be Superflex, or are you okay doing either one? Do you have a preference? And also, let's throw a tight end premium in there. Are you adding that to start because some of these tight ends are rough?
Take or leave tight end premium. I can explain that why in a minute. I mean, I'm fine with it. I like it. It just makes, especially for me when I'm trying to get that guy anyway at the top of the draft. I'm trying to get Kelsey, Kittle, Pitts, somebody like that right now in a startup. And I agree also with what Pat said about, like, it's just, why go for the middle tight ends? There are so many guys on the list that are all pretty much like a point away from each other. There's no need to do that. Just wait and take a shot on some of the rookies late. I do that in the 3rd and 4th round. I think, and your listeners should come away with Cade Otton and Jeremy Ruckert. Not bad situations. Both guys are amazing blockers, super strong guys, good hands.
Going to be on the field.
They're going to get on the field sooner because they need them to block. And as silly as that might be, as sort of intuitive and obvious as that might sound, those are the guys that are going to be able to catch the ball, and because they have the opportunities as they're on the field. But back to Superflex, I think that's the most fun way to do it. I'll play in a 1-quarterback league somewhat reluctantly now. If it's a home league, it won't bother me as much. I'm there for the draft and all the other things. But in a dynasty league, I'd like it to be Superflex. My first dynasty league, I kid you not, was a 2-quarterback league, and it was just opportunity. It was just somebody was starting one. I like the rules and the point scoring, and I thought, this is interesting. I want to do a dynasty league, and it's still going. It's a 2-quarterback league, and that really made me like it and then appreciate Superflex. First of all, you're never tapping into all the quarterbacks, the wealth at that position, the highest scoring one in most leagues, when you're only drafting 12 of them that matter.
Right.
I mean, I can have 2 quarterbacks, 24 deep. You have 2 great quarterbacks. In a 1-quarterback league. Nobody wants to trade for them. It's just kind of it's just, I don't want to say watered down. That's really not the right analogy, but it's a useless position almost. It's not, you're not trying to optimize it. And I think some of the things that you're asking about, like tight end premium, you're optimizing the way the league is. And when we start up new leagues, like we do a couple of Ohio leagues here, we're starting up another one, live drafting league. Number one fun feature to have is that everybody gets together, even for the rookie drafts, to draft live, mixing up the scoring a little bit and the settings. If you can have a flexible league, start up to 2 quarterbacks, 1 to 6 running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, it gives people an opportunity to find value across the board, draft players they like. You're not diluting it to the point where the best players aren't valuable, but it gives you more flexibility in setting your lineup. Now I can do the 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end, super flex league. But there are so many neat things you can do with scoring and settings to keep league a different startup that you're doing. I can't start up 10 leagues every year, right? I'll have way too many. I've already cut back. But if you were to start up a league, you guys came to me and asked me to join, first thing I'm going to ask is the scoring. Is it super flex? Those kinds of things. And people are probably going to stay in it when they have players that they can use. And with flexible starting lineups, I totally didn't mean to go down this rabbit hole. There's so
no. This is what we want.
When you don't limit yourself for 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, three wide receivers, and it puts parameters around it. There are people that like that rigidity. I just don't think it's fun to be in leagues like that. With the more freedom you can give to your league in rules, in trading all year round, just like an open market, I think the better. Fewer people leave. They appreciate you're treating them like adults. We've learned over the years that the more flexible and open, the better. People are still going to lose. You can only have 1 trophy winner, right?
That's right.
But you're in a dynasty league. You want to win it more than once, and you want everybody else to stick around too. So.
You're building that Brady dynasty, and yeah, I like how you ended that there. The more flexibility you give to your league mates, the more they're going to want to stick around because you're not rigid. It's not we have to do X, Y, or Z. I mean, this is where everyone who knows me knows I'm gonna pine for some IDP being more of a regular thing because we're missing the whole side of the ball, guys. Like that's the thing that bothers me. We're missing the whole side of the ball. You would never draft a pitching staff in baseball, right? It's not something you would do. So I don't like team defense, but I also don't like kickers, and kickers are a big part of it.
I want to like IDP more than I do, and I think it's because I'm not as great at it as I am with offense. I've struggled a bit. Like I know the best players coming out, like you, that the top heavy class we had, you knew the best players, but they don't all translate. And it's tougher for me to identify that honestly than it is on offense. And I've struggled a little bit to the point where I've brought in defensive coordinators. I do like both sides of the ball, and I think it's important. I like those drafts where you're picking up the defensive players, but I need somebody that has greater insight to keep it fun. And so I learned I need
I'm a
defensive
DC
coordinator.
in a couple leagues. Yeah. I'm a DC in a couple leagues for sure.
He's really my co-coach.
Yeah.
Co-owner. I mean, let's be real.
Assistant head coach, defensive coordinator, that's how it goes for sure. Pat, when you're starting up, I think the general rule is we like super flex. Just in general here. Are you a super flex to start guy? Are you tight end premium? What do you want to do if you were starting one today that had to get started? Which way are you leaning?
I'm a super flex guy for sure. And I know some people are really set in their ways about 1 quarterback, and I'm not going to dog on those people. I know, Jeremy's co-host Shane is very adamant that, super flex is the way to go and everything else is trash. I'm not quite that extreme, but here's the one point I would really make about super flex leagues. After year 1, you are just doing a rookie draft every year, rookies and veteran scrubs. And if you want to make that draft more fun, rookie drafts are infinitely more fun when there are quarterbacks, when they
maybe not this year, but yeah,
not this year, not this year when super flex rookie drafts and 1 QB rookie drafts were pretty indistinguishable. But I would say that for the most part, when you're doing super flex, it really adds a lot to those rookie drafts. And next year, especially when we're talking about maybe 6 quarterbacks in the first round or 3 or 4 in the top 10, it's going to be much more exciting to be in one of those drafts where you've got, it's a loaded class, especially at quarterback. Rookie drafts in 2023 are going to be amazing, especially in Superflex.
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, we could get a bunch of quarterbacks going in the first round this year. I mean, we could have this year, but I hold to that. It was almost like when everyone's deciding to check through to see the next card. That's kind of what it was after Pickett went. It was like all the teams are checking through. But speaking of all of these startups, by now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Think it sounds complicated? It is not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you are among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test your general manager skills for free, FREE, and a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use the promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. So let's do a little bit of strategy, and then I want to talk about some players here, Jeremy. So strategy in a QB league. How many QBs should go in the first round of a 12-man super flex league? And this is different than 2 QBs. And 2 QBs, everyone has to start 2 QBs. Yeah. I really only like 2 QBs if I'm doing 10-man because everyone's got to have your 2 starters and a backup, and that is the only way everyone can have 3. Is by doing a 10-man, 12-man. Now that's 36 quarterbacks. Someone's getting hung out to dry, on occasion every single week. So super flex is good because if your quarterback's hurt, if you don't have enough on the roster, you can play another guy, probably not going to score you as much as a quarterback. So you want more, and they're going to go high. But how many QB should go in round 1? Should we do a dynasty super flex draft today?
4-point or 6-point touchdown. I'm just kidding. I think it's the same either way. It's,
yes.
I mean, there are at least 6. And I asked this question, some of my friends here across, fantasy football leagues in the industry and, our former podcast guests, all kinds of people, because it's an interesting question and you'll get all kinds of different answers, 6, 8, 9. There are those that still think that, Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, those guys slip into the first round. I know people who don't think Burrow should be there, had a great season last year. So, you have Josh Allen.
Steelers fans?
Yeah. I'm a Browns fan, buddy. So
I'm a Steelers fan.
Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. There are folks that don't, think Murray's up there. They think Lamar Jackson is, Burrow. So I think if you just go with 6 or 8, right? What happens to you at the end of that first round when all of those guys are gone? Are you still taking a quarterback that, is definitely dropped? Let's say you have the 112 and that quarterback's slipping into the second round. You have back-to-back picks. You could take one of the quarterbacks that fell through. It's kind of like a first-round pick, of a friend who says that, the 201 is basically a first round pick. I mean, it's somebody that fell out of the first round. So you get that quarterback at 112 or 201. Are you taking another quarterback on that turn or an elite player that maybe is still available? I don't know, Justin Jefferson or maybe one of the running backs. I think that, there are 6 to 8 quarterbacks legitimately in that first round. And I want one of them. And then, you have thoughts to make at the end of that first round. I don't know if I answered your question, but I don't think there are as many first round quarterbacks as we sometimes see come off the board in super flex startups. I mean, you'll see 10 players. Russell Wilson sometimes sneaks in there. It's arguable.
I think most of the time, though, you see the opposite of that. I think in industry leagues, you'll see, people taking more QBs.
Yeah.
But I think people are so used to not taking QBs in the first round that, Pat, sometimes you get these quarterbacks not coming off the board. So I'll take like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen at 1, and then I'm seeing running backs and wide receivers go, and I'm going, please let another top 5 QB fall to me in the second round because I will double up.
Yeah.
It's the way to go for sure. Pat, what do you think? Is it 8 QBs that need to go there? Is it 6? Is there just kind of based on what's happening? And also just kind of a side question. Do you think it's fair to start a super flex league with more than 12 owners as a snake, or does that need to be auctioned so everyone has a chance at all the quarterbacks?
Yeah, we did a 14-team Superflex last year. I'm in that with Shane, Jeremy's co-host, and a bunch of other guys. And 14 is tough. I mean, my quarterbacks were like Tua, Drew Lock, and Teddy Bridgewater. So I mean, it's very rough.
Pat is campaigning for the auction moving forward.
Yes, I think
there's a case to be made for auction in 14 teams. As far as how many should go in startups in the year 2022, I think it should be at a minimum 6. I think for sure you're going to see Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Justin Herbert go in the first 5 picks. And then I think the other 3 that have to go for sure in some order are Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and Joe Burrow. And to anyone who says Burrow is not a first-round pick, I am doing a startup in a
we have open spots.
A FantasyPros company startup, and it's a lot of our developers and some of those guys. I picked 5th, and I took Burrow 5th. And the thing about Lamar and Kyler, I think they're absolute first rounders. You know what you get with the running, like that just turbocharges their point totals. But are those guys even average NFL passers? I mean, like that's kind of an open question. And if you are a great runner and you prove over time to, not be a good passer, and we haven't seen Lamar or Kyler have any playoff success yet. And ultimately that's what teams are after, playoff success. And if it's determined that those guys just aren't good enough passers to get them over the top, then those 2 guys are going to have Tyrod Taylor career arcs. And that's definitely not what you want if you're sinking first round startup capital into those guys. But I mean, that said, I do think they are clear first rounders. And then the guys who are on the cusp are like, Dak Prescott for sure. I think I did a mock startup where I took him at 112. Maybe that's it. Like maybe you could sneak Russ in there, but I don't know. Is he kind of over the age curve?
Probably.
I don't know I don't think like some of the young guys like Fields, Lance, Lawrence, we don't feel good enough to get those guys all the way into the first. So maybe it's just 6 or 7.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I love what you just said. And if you can come out of it, I mean, the 10th ranked player, or 11th, 12th, Matt Stafford, if you can come away with that after what you said, getting that great player that you wanted and then fade the quarterbacks a little bit, because at that point you're not getting an elite player and you're going to get an older player. If you can get Russell Wilson, Matt Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, those guys aren't going anywhere next year.
My last strategy question, and I just have to ask this here, is going to be, Jeremy, let's say you're on the end, you're not doing an auction, you're in a 12-man, and you take a quarterback. Let's just say Dak Prescott, your pick 112, right?
Okay.
Are you doubling up and taking another quarterback? Or if there's like a top end wideout, a top end RB on the board, are you taking them? Yes. Or are you just saying, hey, look, I got to take my QBs. I'll worry about the running back and wide receiver fallout later?
Earlier in the draft, when I know I could get like Herbert, let's say, or somebody that I really like that's young at the top of the first round. If I'm at the bottom like that and I'm coming away with Dak, either at the end of the first, like you just said, I'm going with an elite skill player in the second round because I'm already tapping into what I consider to be just a big tier of starting quarterbacks, and I'll try to come away with a few of them. When everyone's trying to reach for wide receivers and running backs, then I'm going to just go in and kind of cherry pick quarterbacks. I've done that many times.
Does that differ if it's 14 to 16?
Yeah, well, I think so. Of course, yeah, it would have to, because you're not going to get a couple of good quarterbacks. And like you said, a snake on a 16.
Yeah.
If you're drafting at 16 and it has to be a snake or you're not going to get that. But then that affects all the other teams. I think you made a great case for auction drafts, which I love, by the way. I think auction startups, people should look into that more. You can have a way bigger league.
They take forever, but they're just so much more fair.
Yeah, more fair.
Yeah, so much more fair. Are you on that same boat, Pat? If you're picking at the end of a 12-man, you'll skip the second QB, take the elite player. But if it's 14 to 16, you kind of have to get that second QB.
Absolutely. And in that 12-team mock where I took Prescott 112, I think I took CeeDee Lamb at 201. I mean, that seemed like the perfect stack, the two guys. And you do need to get a foothold, and there just wasn't a quarterback I liked enough to take at 201.
All right, let's get into some players here. I know we want to make sure we talk about these guys. So, Jeremy, look, I'm going to throw maybe the hardest one out of all of them to you first. And you are the Browns fan. Your team just traded for this guy. Pat and I have talked about him many times on this show. Basically what I've said about Deshaun Watson is, look, I don't want him. It's not because he's a Brown. It's not because he's not a good player. He's a great player. It's that I feel like he's just one more accusation away from going away, maybe forever, out of the NFL. So it makes it really difficult for me not only to draft him, but also to rank him. You know, we're making rankings for people.
Right.
And I don't want to make this guy too low and look silly when he's a top 5 quarterback moving forward. But I also don't want to look silly and say he's a top 5 quarterback and then he never plays another down in the NFL again. I think both of these are, you know, situations that are within the realm of possibility.
Sure.
So what is your strategy on Deshaun Watson? And, you know, I've said this many times, we're not here to be the moral police. If you don't like Deshaun Watson, don't take him on your team. Like I said, first rule of fantasy is fun. If you can't enjoy rooting for a player, don't take him, whoever it is, doesn't matter. So anyway, Deshaun Watson and his off the field stuff causing him a big problem. What are you doing with him? Right now?
My take on it's much different than it used to be. I think I moved him for Jared Goff and a 3rd round pick at one point, right? Early on, 2 years ago, right? We're talking like when this broke and, you know, he missed a season. Generally, I don't do things like that, but I was pretty concerned about that. And I still want to kick my own butt because I did that. But I don't want to get into, you know, what he's done, but just the fact that the Browns brought him in, that's a really smart, cerebral front office. And trust me, this is the first time I've ever said that about the Browns front office. I mean, over the years, the 3 of us could have done a better job of managing a football team from the, you know, from the top right there.
Couldn't have done worse, right?
You couldn't have done worse by trying, you know, if you tried to lose. That's what I don't get. Were they trying to lose? Because you almost couldn't. It's inconceivable that could happen for so long. But I think Watson, definitely top 10 quarterback. He's been a top 5 guy. I'm no longer concerned about the legal part of it. Maybe he misses some time. You know, maybe it's a year. I don't think so. I think we're past that, and I think the Browns front office pretty much knows the peak of what could happen to him, the worst case scenario. And I don't think they would have done what they did, paid what they paid, and given him that contract. So I'm assuming that he's going to play at some point, and then you need to draft him in a startup in the first 10 quarterbacks. I mean, that's, I think, a given. But I'm making that assumption, right? Baseline is that he's going to play. If you're concerned about it, I mean, there are other quarterbacks to draft. I think we're past that. I hope those things, I hope it was a smear campaign, but with stuff like that, you know, with all the people involved, it's crazy. And I try not to talk about the subject itself, but the fact that he wasn't playing, he had a year off. He's in peak physical condition. You know, he still practiced. I think he's ready to step on the field and be great for us in fantasy football. And so that's how I'm approaching it, that he's going to be there.
And the situation's fluid, Pat. I mean, it could change tomorrow. So, and with new information, opinions change, of course. So, no, I don't think anyone is going to hold your feet to the flame if you draft Deshaun Watson, or if you're suggesting to draft Deshaun Watson, because the talent's there. You know, so Pat, are you doing what is your take on Watson? Is he a guy on your list? Is he not on your list? Or are you putting him in there and hoping you don't have to take him? Like, what's your strategy with Watson?
Yeah, I mean, setting aside any moral threshold you might have for drafting players, and I think for the most part, let's face it, most fantasy managers do not have much of a moral threshold. Like, we might be repulsed personally, but you know, we want our fantasy teams to win.
I think beating your friends is more important than winning the money, but you know, that's my ego.
I mean, I think you're right.
Yeah,
and so, you know, as Jeremy said, I think with all the cases that are on the table are civil cases, and there's nothing on the table as far as criminal cases. So you know that the Browns have done their due diligence in this and have a pretty good indication that there's not going to be anything coming criminally. You know, not a slam dunk that there couldn't be at some point in the future, but yeah. And so he's going to go. I agree with Jeremy that he should be one of the first 10 quarterbacks taken, and really, given his performance history, you know, he's been a top 5 guy every time he's played a full season. So you're getting a discount because of the outside stuff, the accusations, and you know, maybe it's potentially profitable to take that discount.
The hardest thing about this for me is that it's not just Watson that is affected by Watson's stuff and a potential suspension. It's Amari Cooper. It's David Njoku. It's the run game. Like, the whole offense is affected because they're going to be going down to Jacoby Brissett most likely, unless, they don't get rid of Baker, and no one can see that happening. That bridge seems to be completely burned, but that's for later. We'll talk about those guys later. Jeremy, what about Trey Lance, Justin Fields? Like we've
Great
seen
question.
very little about of both of these guys, and the Bears got a lot of they caught a lot of flack for not giving Fields weapons, which is what the Packers have done with Rodgers. He's become upset, but they have way more needs. The Packers have always kind of just needed wide receivers in a couple other spots, and just have refused to take one in the first round. They didn't seem to get him the weapons. Trey Lance still has Jimmy G on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy G just took this team to the NFC Championship. He has some injury stuff, but they paid so much to move up to Trey Lance. It's hard to believe that he wouldn't be their week 1 starting quarterback this year, but we're just not sure. So there's a lot of gray area with both of these players. Are you in or out on Lance and Fields?
I think you need to be in on both of them. I did hear a weird rumor through the industry. I can't remember who said it now and where they got it, but at the time I was like, oh wow, that's some insider trading information right there. that some players don't think as highly of Trey Lance as you might expect. But Justin Fields,
is that the Debo thing where Debo mainly wanted to get out because he didn't want to play with Trey Lance?
I think that could have something to do with it. I'm not going to go there. I think, they did pay a lot for Trey Lance. Listen, there were our opponents, in our leagues thought highly of Trey Lance, drafted him before Fields. The NFL did the same thing. I'm very high on Justin Fields, more familiar with him though. I think he's going to be the best one from the class. So at some point we'll be looking at this class and say Justin Fields was the best quarterback. But even if not, I think you buy Justin Fields. First of all, the cost is not that high from what I've seen. And Trey Lance, I probably a little bit higher, but he didn't play at all last year. So you really look, they didn't know what they had in him yet. I think you're taking the slow approach there, but I think you acquire both of them. I think you have to, just based on what you expect the ceiling to be in this game we play. It's not we all have quarterbacks on our rosters we've paid for. Some of them are older, right? You have to pay for quarterbacks. So I think you acquire both of those players. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm more on Lance than I am Fields. I think Fields is a better QB, but I think Lance has a better weapons around him, the better offense, and it's more proven with Shanahan. I think they're going to score more. So I like Lance a little bit more, and I like Fields.
Makes sense.
Pat, where do you stand on these QBs?
So I'm kind of with you, Boggs. It is all about the ecosystems, and the 49ers have a very healthy ecosystem. And yeah, I've heard the rumors that the organization has been underwhelmed with what they've seen by Lance so far. But hey, it's a young guy who didn't play even a lot of college games and hasn't really gotten much NFL experience yet. But they did the smart thing. They took the Patrick Mahomes approach with Trey Lance and gave him a red shirt first year in the NFL.
Yeah, smart.
And now they're gonna plug him into an offense where he's got great weapons, a really strong offensive line, and I think he's set up and he's gonna smash as a runner. I mean, he's such a lethal runner. He's not going to be a great passer right off the bat, but that's just going to be gravy. Anything he gives you
Lamar
as a passer.
Jackson won a unanimous MVP as a rough passer.
Really good.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, with Fields, I think I agree with Jeremy. I think he maybe was the most talented passer to come out of the 2021 draft. But I was just talking to Dave Richard of CBS about this, and Dave's a Bears fan, and he made the point that, they're just tanking. It looks like the Bears are tanking. They just haven't put anything around Fields. And is this organization, if they do finish with a 3-14 record and have a top 3 draft pick next year, are they committed to Fields, or are they maybe going to go for CJ Stroud or Bryce Young? And, this was not the front office that drafted Justin Fields.
Right.
And, then that's
it'll be good news for Fields because it won't be a quarterback.
Right. Yeah,
but it ain't going to be a wide receiver either. It's going to be Will Anderson if they're picking 1 overall. So I'm
nice. Right. When you can get the next Lawrence Taylor. Exactly. But I mean, the thing about Fields that if that's the case and they do move on from him and decide to trade him, it would be a bad look for the organization, but it's not the end of Fields' career. However, his career will have sort of been set back 2 years, and all of a sudden, you have to sort of downgrade the overall value package that you get with Fields. So I'm definitely more on Lance than Fields.
Let's go rapid fire on these last couple here. So I'll bounce back and forth between you two guys. CMC, Christian McCaffrey, Jeremy, in or out?
Out.
out just because
in
it's
Dynasty
the age.
the mileage. I mean, I love him. I'm fine owning him, but I think you have to get out while they're getting good.
I'm still in. I just can't turn away the talent. Just the 30-point running back is just impossible for me to turn away. I wish I could quit you, CMC. I can't do it. Pat, where are you at on CMC?
I feel you.
So I want to say I'm in, but for practical purposes, in that 14-team league I was talking about, I traded Christian McCaffrey for 3 first-round picks, 2 this year and 1 next year. And at the time, someone in that league said, "Oh, it really is that all you got for Christian McCaffrey?" And then 2 weeks later, he was basically out for the season. So, I don't know. I mean, in a startup, if like people are really fading him, I could see taking him, and then maybe I step on the accelerator a little more and try to be more aggressive in year one. But
that's great. Yeah. I mean, out as in I'm not going after him and paying for him. I'm going to try to do what Pat did and get as much as I can, a haul hopefully for him. Now.
Yeah, and
but in a startup, different. Yeah.
Yep. I would echo Jeremy on that.
Pizza traded him for Javonte Williams, and I was upset in one of our
straight
leagues.
up.
So straight up. So it could be good. Like it's not unfair, but I'm a CMC guy, so I was upset. I'm also a Saquon Barkle guy. 25 years old. Guys had injuries though, and even when he played last year, he didn't look great. Although the entirety of the Giants' offense didn't look like they were putting much effort. They made Kenny Golladay look like a jag, who had been a good player. Maybe he's taking a step back and whatever, but it was rough in New York. There wasn't a lot of effort by anyone last season. What do you think on Barkley? Are you in or out on Barkley?
I'm out.
You're out. It's
thing
the injuries or it's the age.
Really, honestly, I love the guy in the passing game. I never really thought he was the greatest running back, but it's the same thing with CMC. I'm just, and a slew of other guys that I'm fine in a startup if I can get him at the right price, but I'm not trying to trade for him in any dynasty leagues.
I'm also disagreeing there. I love Barkley. I think you could get him cheap right now, which is why I want him. And because he's had injuries, there's been a little less wear on the tires, but the wear has been less because he's been hurt.
I got stuck with him in dynasty leagues. I did. I couldn't trade him after he got hurt. I could not trade him for anything. Yeah, I had to hold. Yeah, might be part of it.
Yeah. It burns. It burns when you take a guy that high and he doesn't work out. And that's why it's difficult taking RBs that high, because we know they're going to burn out at some point.
I'm worried. I'm worried Barkley is on a Todd Gurley track, to be honest with you, Boggs. And I know, at least with McCaffrey, I'm confident that if he's healthy, he's going to play really well and score a lot of fantasy points. Like, I don't have that same confidence in Barkley, who we basically saw get outplayed by Devontae Booker at times last year. Like,
look, I don't like it, but it's fair. And there were many times I remember doing a show with the Welsh, and he said, I was watching the Giants. I said, man, Barkley looks explosive. He looks good. And it was Booker. And I was like, dude, you're not wrong. Like, I was watching, and I'm like, oh, there goes Saquon. Oh my God, that's Booker.
Yes.
When did Booker get that pass? He wasn't that fast ever. So I mean, I'm still in. I can't quit him, but I'm the guy that holds a little too long. I know that. I get obsessed. I hold a little too long. I probably should be getting out, but it's also Barkley, like Jeremy mentioned, impossible to trade right now. What about Zeke? I mean, because the Zeke hate, I feel like the Zeke hate went way too far last year.
Yes.
And then now the love is coming back. Has the love swung back the other way to where the love is back too much, Jeremy? Where are you at on Zeke? Overall?
No, I don't think many people seem to want him. I'm in a best ball dynasty league. I'm only in a couple of those. It's a charity league. But I'm trying to trade Zeke to get back into the first round to have a pick, because like when you're out in this league, you're out. Like you have no hope to get, hopes of getting points. And I'm having trouble moving him. I mean, I tried to trade him straight up for like the 108 or something like that. So I could just get a wide receiver, and it didn't work out. So the same as the other running backs, just the age, the situation. I'm not trying to acquire him. I will happily do so in a startup or something like that. But he's one of the players I own quite a bit of that I'm trying to sell right now.
What do you think, Pat? You selling on Zeke, or you holding him?
Yeah, the love has not come back for me. I'm very cold-hearted towards Zeke at this point.
He's made up his mind, and he's not changing it yet.
Yeah, we just haven't seen him look like the old Zeke for a while, and there is a lot of mileage on that odometer. Like, and we know that. And there's a good young running back already in place in Dallas. So yeah, I'm not real optimistic about a revival and that Zeke gets back to the point where he's putting up 1,800 yards, consistently 15 touchdowns. I don't think we're going to see that again.
And Pollard's affecting that too. I mean, I'm seeing people love him in my leagues. I mean, they really do want.
And Mike McCarthy
Pollard is almost as popular as any backup quarterback. Like that's kind of where he is.
Yeah, and Mike McCarthy is always rotated his backs, always.
Right. Yeah. My thing with Zeke is I'm not in for him like I am for CMC and Barkley, where I think they could still be the peak. But I am in as far as what market value is on Zeke right now in terms of buying him, because I think, like Jeremy said, it can be fairly low. Your offer can be low because people are looking to get out from under him because they think they can get a big haul back. And sometimes it's just negotiating with those people, which is, to me, one of the worst parts about Dynasty is the back and forth and constant bickering you have about some of these trades. But that's the process. It's what you have to do to get the trade done. So I like what I can buy him for. I would hate selling him after investing right now because you're not going to get anywhere close. So I think in that nature, I probably would go down with the ship because you're not going to get back enough. But I would pay for him just because market value is lower. Last RB, Jeremy. And this is one that's on a little more positive note because he is so fresh. We haven't seen him play in the NFL yet. Travis Etienne, obviously the Liz Frank surgery last season with Jacksonville, probably the luckiest Jaguar out of all of them to not actually really fit through the Urban Meyer nonsense
Skip that
as
year.
much, or at least get on the field with him. He just got to kind of sit on the sideline and watch the whole thing happen like a movie, with some popcorn on the sideline. But the situation's also good for him in terms of production too, because Robinson blew out towards Achilles at the end of the last season. So he's going to be recovering, probably start the year on the pup, most likely, even though for whatever reason, the last year, it seems like ACLs have turned into 6 months instead of a year, and Achilles have turned into 9 months instead of 18 months or whatever.
Turned into 9 months instead of never play football again.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, it's amazing.
As soon as we saw Deontay Foreman back on the field, I was like, maybe Achilles can get fixed. He looks fresh, So
call me a believer. These doctors, these surgeons, amazing. Yeah, and you're talking Travis Etienne, right? And yes, I'm a buyer. First of all, I was very high on him, and he kind of slipped right in the draft, various reasons we kind of know of it, but he fell, and definitely still a buyer. And it's based on what you said. These players getting healthy. It wasn't an Achilles. He didn't completely destroy his knee and come back. And I know that Liz Frank can linger and last, but I'm a buyer. I think you need to purchase you some Travis Etienne.
You can ask any soldier from the French Revolution that the Liz Frank's injury does hurt, but it is recoverable. What do you think about Etienne here, Pat?
Also buying, was always electric in the open field at Clemson. Now he's reunited with Trevor Lawrence, and he got to miss that Urban Meyer circus, so he's not going to have to play some stupid Percy Harvin role that he was probably going to be miscast for. Doug Peterson is going to use him conventionally, and he's a guy I'm excited about.
The Percy Harvin role. Always had one of those at Ohio State and Florida. We gotta get one. God. Yes. Thank you, Lord, that it is no longer Urban Meyer. How about a wide receiver? We only put one here. Spoiler alert, and no one's gonna be surprised who knows me. This is my being a Steelers fan. I'm still all the way in on JuJu. Guy is still only 25. He had the corpse of Ben Roethlisberger throwing him passes last year before he got hurt. The year before that, he had Mason Rudolph, who was awful, and Duck Hodges throwing him passes. So I know Antonio Brown not playing there obviously affected him, but now he goes to Kansas City. He's playing with Patrick Mahomes. They drafted Sky Moore. Travis Kelce's going to keep the middle open for him. I'm excited about what he can do here, but he's also only on a 1-year deal with the Chiefs. So he may end up going, somewhere with a terrible quarterback next year. So in terms of dynasty, still young. He is proven. It's taken a couple steps back, but he's as young as some of these incoming rookies since he started in the league when he was 12 years old. So what do you think of JuJu, Jeremy?
I'm buying JuJu. First of all, he's young. He did have that incredible season. He started off hot. The thing with him is I believe he's better suited to the slot. the crossers, the digs, the in routes, all the stuff where you can find the soft spot in the zone. I mean, he's very savvy. He's got great hands. He's not an amazing leaper to fight 50-50 ball, but in an open, and he's good after the catch as well.
He'll get some
I hope they're able to use him like that. But with the other players that Casey brought in, there's kind of an overlap. I'm not sure who's going to necessarily play that spot. Maybe they'll rotate him around, but I'm more confident of his abilities when he's inside like that. But I definitely think you have to with his youth, and he's not terribly expensive. That's the thing. As young as he is, yeah.
Fitz, have I seeped into your brain at all with JuJu? Have I moved him up your boards at all because I've been talking him up so much?
Yeah, I mean, so I always liked him. Like, for a guy to have the sort of production he did at such a precocious age. And even if Antonio Brown was there, like, that's not the sole reason that JuJu smashed early on. Like, he's a good player. He's still very young, and he's got this great system now, playing for Andy Reid, playing with Patrick Mahomes. The only thing is, I mean, he runs kind of a limited route tree. As Jeremy said, there's some sort of weird crossover with what some of his teammates are going to be doing, and roles are going to be kind of, it'll be interesting to see how things are distinguished between all the wide receivers and their roles in that offense. But I am in, I'm not thinking he's like a top 10 dynasty receiver or anything, but like, I'm generally good vibes on JuJu for 2022 and beyond.
So the last one I have to ask you about here, Jeremy and Pat, is Kyle Pitts. We talked about tight ends, tight end premium leagues or not. You are in on tight ends and getting one of the top ones. For Dynasty, there's no one really close. It's Pitts and then everybody else, because the guys that are good are just so much longer in the tooth than Pitts
exactly.
is. The quarterback is rough. It's Marcus Mariota now. Maybe it's Desmond Ridder. Could be Mr. Outside Higher, as Michael Scott would say. Could be him at some point here for Atlanta. But is Pitts your first player that you want in a super flex after a quarterback? Is your perfect draft quarterback Pitts? Is that what it is?
I'd have to say yes, because that's my process. It used to be Kittle, Kelsey before that. I've gotten both of them before. So based on the way that I do it, it would be Pitts. Yeah. Over Andrews and the other players. I still don't know if Andrews is going to do what he did. I love him, but I mean, Pitts, I want Hawkinson. I want those young guys. Pat Freiermuth, if he can keep up what he's doing as well. Dalton Schultz came out of nowhere. But yeah, I want the top guys, and I have, every year I try my best to find lower players that'll maybe turn into, top 12 tight end down the line, and kind of keep them on the taxi squad if you have one, or at the bottom of your roster, right? Just in case. But with Pitts, you don't have to do that. And I took him very high last year in rookie drafts. I traded up to get him. I think that he's, upper echelon. He's the guy now. And like you said, long in the tooth players behind him, they're close. I'll take them as a happy second, but Pitts he's young and he's going to play for a long time.
Yeah. Is that where you're at with Pitts as well, Pat? I mean, I know there are people that I think it's not the industry. It's more the public reception is, well, he only had the one touchdown last year, blah, 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 blah. We all know about touchdown regression. If you played fantasy football long enough, one can turn into 10 easily next season with an adjustment. So I'm all in on Pitts. I mean, I think you got to make it 3 for 3 here, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's the tight end number one in Dynasty, no question. And even though the quarterback situation is still kind of problematic in Atlanta, like in tight end premium, I think the only position players you consider taking ahead of him are Jonathan Taylor, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson. That's it. And in tight end premium, I almost wouldn't argue if you took him number one above those guys. I personally wouldn't. I think he'd be the fourth for me out of those four. But immensely valuable in tight end premium, and still really, really valuable in just conventional PPR.
Well, look, guys, I have probably 8,000 more questions, right? But we are out of time. So Jeremy, at Dynasty Madman on the Twitter machine, Jeremy Browand, please tell everyone about all your great work, where they can find you and what you got coming up.
Well, you can find me every week at Dynasty Trades HQ podcast. sometimes stream, sometimes get on YouTube. We're a little older, so we're not on TikTok. We're not, we really do need to get with the times. But and a couple other projects too, Off the Rails Dynasty and Off Season. We do some shows there and Dynasty Radio, but that's just fun project stuff. It's really all about the Dynasty Trades HQ. Check out my friend Shane Manila, Michael Sipes, my co-host on that show. Give it a listen. It's a really fun show. I had a great time with you, Pat. I can't believe I didn't even just do this to make you look good or look a little bit better. I agreed with almost everything you said tonight, today, other than maybe a couple things we wavered, but I was happy to see that. Yeah, that's good. That must mean I'm doing stuff right. So I agree with Pat Fitzmaurice.
If you're agreeing with Fitz, you are definitely in the right here. At Fitz_FF Pat, what is coming up for you, my friend?
Well, Jeremy, I'm gonna have to make it a point to argue with you the next time I'm on your show. We're just pick fights with you for no good reason.
Come on, man. Shane does that. We almost got in a fist fight about Desmond Ridder beating out Marcus Mariota. I mean, that's how deep we go on that show.
So yeah, Jeremy, thanks for coming on, and you can find me, of course, at Fitz_FF. We've got our best ball kit coming out on Fantasy Pros. I'm doing position primers for that, so you can see all my recommendations and fades at all the individual positions for best ball. And check out the Fits on Fantasy show. Good episode this week with Dave Richard of CBS. We talk maybe a little football, but mostly Chicago pizza. Had a conversation about Jake the Snake Roberts. Good time. So yeah,
This I'm definitely diving in on that one. Pizza and Jake the Snake Roberts. I mean, yes. you're in Millennial Central right here, so I'm all about it. You can find me on Twitter at Bogman Sports. I'm of course here. You can catch me on Tuesdays on Leading Off, on Discord on Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Of course, I do In This League with the Welsh, where we got baseball and football. Welsh has Prospect One. We've got our own Patreon over there, so it's a lot of fun. I do CFP Winning Edge with Nick Allen. I do a lot of shows, so just check out at Bogman Sports, and you can find me. And appreciate Jeremy coming on, and we will see you guys next week. Take it easy, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.